If you had to tell one story that summed up who you were as a person, who you are for sure as a person, tell that story.
When I wake up every morning, I try and be more efficient than I was yesterday, and I try and be less of a piece of shit than I was yesterday. So if I can get answers to those two questions, I come out a better person at the end of it.
You can't put people in buckets, right? We all are a culmination of our experiences in our past and stuff like that, but we all have a brain, which kind of makes it hard for us to put anyone in a bucket because everyone is vastly different.
Welcome to No Universal Answers to the Universe, a video podcast and interview series with Taylor Hall and Kenneth Gibbons. Tonight we are joined by Ebony Wells. Ebony, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right. So you've known Kenneth a lot longer than you've known me. Kind of walk me through your journey up to where you're at right now, kind of early education, and Kenneth tells me that you're a collegiate athlete.
Yes. So my dad was in the military, so I was born in Kansas, jumped around Texas, Germany, and then he retired in Georgia. So I did middle school. I met Kenneth and them in sixth grade, actually, in gym class where they were admiring my height. So I met them then. Been friends ever since middle school, high school, up until now. I went to Harlem High and Grovetown High, and then I went to Florida State for 2 years to play basketball, and then I transferred up to Philadelphia to go to LaSalle. I did 2 years there, and then I did 1 year in Ireland to pursue another degree and also play for a semi-pro team and a college team. So that was pretty dope. And now, once I came back, I worked for a few months at Circle K, and then I started my enterprise career where now I'm an assistant manager at the downtown location.
So a lot to unpack there, but I want to jump right on something in the middle. What was it like going back to retail and customer service between being an international athlete and then working professionally?
It was interesting, I would say. Circle K was my very first job. So even though I was used to being around people and all different types of people since I was born, really, it was tough because now this is my profession. So it's kind of a different aspect because people are expecting something from you. Whereas, when you're not working in retail, it's kind of a mutual exchange. But once you start working, you're there to serve other people. So you kind of have to take a different approach to it.
That is, I'll go ahead and go out there on a limb. I worked at Jimmy John's and Pizza Hut while I was in college, and I did not have that outlook on life. So that seems very, very positive. I don't know. That's probably the better way to look at it is that the fact that you're getting paid to provide a service to somebody else. Mm-hmm. I more or less looked at it as I've got to be here for the next 6 hours. How in the world can I avoid people? So, Taylor, you've worked in a couple of service jobs, right?
Yeah, that has actually been my entire professional career. Other than doing IT work at camp, I've done food service and retail, and now I do phone and written customer service. And I can definitely say I like people over email than I do in person.
Yeah, you can there's like a layer that you can kind of hide behind there. So, so Ebony, can you tell us more about the degrees that you have and what your plan was when you were pursuing those degrees?
Mm-hmm. So I have an undergrad in finance, and then I have an MBA in finance, as well as a master's in human resource management. To be honest, when I first got to school and I realized that I was on the fast track to get my bachelor's, I had two options. I could either slow down or double major, but I don't know why or where it came from, but I told my mom, I was like, I want to get my master's. Once I found out my freshman year that I had to redshirt, I was like, I just want to get my master's. So when I transferred, it was kind of hard because I was so far ahead that a lot of my credits wouldn't even transfer over. So essentially the whole year, there was a transition year where I went to junior college, so I wouldn't have to sit out for basketball. And that whole year essentially didn't count credit-wise because I had too many to switch over to LaSalle. So once I got to LaSalle, I had already had in my mind, like, you know what, I want to get my master's. I've been, you know, if I'm going to be here 5 years, I might as well. So I had to end up taking, I think it was like 6 or 7 undergrad classes each semester in order to finish on time and make up that extra time. So I did that. And to be honest, when I was going to get my master's in Ireland, the only reason why I got into that program really is because I didn't want a job. I didn't want to grow up. And I knew that as long as I was in school, my parents would support me and continue to give me an allowance and all that good stuff. So I was like, oh, what's one more year going to hurt? And that actually was probably the best like year of my life kind of experience. So I'm glad I did that.
So that collegiate schedule comes out to 18, 21 credit hours a semester. Have you always been overtime all day, every day? Or was there a point in your development that you hit that? Because I know I haven't always had the work ethic that I have now.
Now that's been in me since, for some reason, I really love school. My parents did Hooked on Phonics with us when we were little. And then once I got to school, I just kind of ran with it. So even, you know, senior year, when you're done with all your credits and you can either take 3 superlatives and chill out, or you can hit the ground running like me, Kenneth, Denzel. We were all AP calculus and all this other stuff that was completely like, we were like, at the end, we're like, what the heck were we thinking kind of thing. So I've always kind of been foot to the pedal when it came to academics anyways.
Yeah, for the viewers out there, when me and Taylor were on before Ebony hopped on, he asked me to just really quickly sum up Ebony. And I hate putting people in boxes, but I said, Ebony is really, really, really intelligent, and she's very driven, and she's also very, very athletic and you know, very into sports and stuff like that. And again, I hate putting people in boxes, but like, quick summation there, Ebony is by far one of the smartest people I know. So,
Oh, thanks.
So I'm gonna rewind back there. When we were first doing the cold intro there, you had mentioned that you went from Florida State to LaSalle, but you just mentioned that you went to a JUCO in between.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that at?
That was in Marianna, Florida, just an hour away from Tallahassee.
Oh, okay. So as far as JUCOs go, can you kind of walk through that process? How is it different from being at a major university, and kind of what are the positives or pros and cons?
Yeah. So junior college, just like 4-year institutions, junior colleges have different levels. So the one I went to as far as basketball it was in the Panhandle. I think there's only 5 teams in the Panhandle, but it's really, really, really competitive. Like the year I was there, we went to the Final Four, and then the year after, they ended up winning the national championship. So it was kind of like going to a mini Division I without all the rules. We had 4-hour-a-day practices, and then we lifted weights afterwards. Marianna's in the slap mill of nowhere. So all we did was basketball, hang out at coach's house for barbecues, go to school. That's about it. And also that junior college was the first of its kind in terms of having 4-year degrees. So that's one of the main reasons why I went there, because I could just continue on from where I already was when I was at Florida State. So essentially I did do my 3rd year of school there. But like I said, it was too many credits to transfer over when I went to LaSalle, because, you know, they want you to have a certain amount of credits, understandably, from that school if you're going to have your degree is going to be from. So as far as athletics, it's just that school anyway was just as intense. Athletics and academics, it was just as intense. But it didn't kind of have the same rules as the NCAA has in governing how long practices are and things of that nature. But we still had a lot of study times. We would go in the lab and do study hours. Coach made sure that we were kind of locked in there. He's like, look, you got a few hours. Go ahead and study, do what you have to do. There were computers in there. So as far as structure at that school, we were very fortunate because my coach made sure that we had the same caliber of, you know, being cared for and academic support as I did when I was at a Division I school.
Okay. So you brought up a good point talking about the NCAA rules and stuff like that. Earlier you mentioned that you were redshirted as a freshman. Mm-hmm. So the whole red shirt, white shirt process, is something that you hear a lot on TV if you watch Sports Center and ESPN and stuff like that. But can you kind of walk through the process and what those things mean?
Yeah, sure. So redshirt essentially means that you're sitting out, right? So you get to keep the 4 years of eligible playing time, but you get one extra year where you're not playing, but you're continuing to do everything else, like go to school and things of that nature. So it can be from in my instance, it was for an injury. It could be for a host of reasons, but I'll just stick to what I know, right? So mine was for an injury. When I was in high school in 11th grade, I tore my ACL and my meniscus. And the part of my meniscus that I tore, there's not a lot of blood flow going there. So it didn't heal properly. So when I went to Florida State, it was really bothering me after we got really heavy into conditioning and stuff. And they had to end up going in and just shaving the part that they had originally repaired. So by the time that I was ready to come back, I was already so far behind that it was just probably better for me to redshirt and kind of try and get back in the swing of things, or grasp the swing of things really more than anything. So I ended up sitting out that year, but you can still go heavy with academics. So typically you're only required to take, I think, 4 classes, but I did 5. And then in the summertime, I want to say you're only required to take maybe 1 or 2, but I did 2 or 3, like just so that I could stay ahead, because I had already had in my mind, like, I want to get my master's degree. So
That's good. So as far as that goes, if you, and we can get into what your scholarship and stuff was, but if you have like a free ride, it pays for, I'm assuming it pays for everything while you're playing the sport.
Right. So you have, and then there's also situations that I'll explain to you that another avenue I could have taken advantage of. So originally how it was designed is that if you're on a full ride, you get room and board, you get tuition, and then you get a meal plan as well. So that's, ideal situation. You don't have to come out of pocket for anything. But once I got into, and I'm sure you'll ask me about this, but basketball, where I was getting ready to transfer, she gave me the option of, like, I wasn't going to be a part of the team anymore, but she gave me the option of staying and just finishing my degree, and she would pay for me to finish my degree. But I didn't want to do that because that didn't include getting my master's.
Right.
So, and I was like, I can't end basketball on a note like this. Like, let me go somewhere where I can redeem myself and, still try and get that college basketball experience. So.
Yeah. So how was your experience at Florida State as a whole? I know you were injured and then you were like fighting to come back. Like at the end of the day, what how was it? But also what drove you to make the decision to leave outside of the master's program?
Yeah. So to be honest, I hated it. I I hated it was like every day and every season was a countdown. Like I couldn't wait for it to be over. I didn't like it at all. But a part of that, in that, I also have to take my own responsibility for after I got hurt and my attitude changed, and I didn't handle it very well. And I also think that I wasn't completely prepared for that life. College athletics, coming from Grovetown, like, you know how it is, like coming from Grovetown and then going to a large Division I school in the ACC, like it's completely different. And I wasn't prepared mentally, emotionally, athletically. I was behind in every aspect. So that was hard for me. Long story short, I didn't have the best attitude, and I feel like they didn't assist me in the transition as well as they should have. So a combination of those two things. I didn't decide to leave per se. She kicked me off the team, but kind of made me to save face, offered to continue to pay for my education. I don't know. But it would have been miserable. Like, it was better for me to just go and try and start over somewhere else. So that's why I left there.
So I mean, you brought up a really good point, but I want to also, before I get into that, commend you. You hear about all these athletes on television and stuff like that who are never at fault, right? They it's never any percentage their fault, right? So it's really, I want to say, grown up of you. Very, very responsible of you to admit that there was some percentage of that was on you. But I would tell you that transitioning in general, I can't imagine being an athlete, but transitioning just academically and stuff like that. Some of the things that I did myself was like you talked about how we were in AP classes together and stuff like that. I only took one AP exam in high school, and I took all those classes again my first year of college. Really the first semester of freshman year. I loaded up. I got permission from the dean to take over 18 hours, and I loaded up on those classes. So I was taking a lot of hours, but there were classes that I already had a level of familiarity with. And I think, in my opinion, that really helped me transition and get off on the right foot. So the transition, I can't imagine being a college athlete. I'm sure is just, so much more on top of that, especially, you said like taking extra credit hours already. So you're already, doing above and beyond in academics. So,
And building off of Kenneth's point, a lot of professional athletes probably have some PR to worry about when they're trying to save face and not be at fault when situations go down. Did you feel that kind of pressure on the collegiate level, or is there not as much of a public eye on teams unless they're in tournaments or they're on professional non-collegiate teams?
Yeah, I think that it's mostly for the superstars, right? So people who are scoring so many points a game and are the known names. Like I guarantee you, if I went to the club and I threw up outside and made a spectacle of myself, no one would have found out about it, right? But if the star player, if the Natasha Howard and the Sierra Brevard, if they had made a spectacle of themselves, then it would have gathered a little bit more attention. But in the grand scheme of things, I was on the team, but I wasn't instrumental, if that makes sense. So probably not so much for me, but in the public eye for people who are, and this goes for any sport, people who are like that person on the team, then yeah, they definitely have to worry about PR and worry about what they're doing because people are watching.
Now, do you wish that you had attained that level of celebrity, or do you prefer to focus on your own athletic performance and rather have your stats speak for you?
I mean, a little bit of stardom never hurt anybody. So, like, when I was in school, like, people knew me for athletics more than anything, right? Except for the people who are close to me. Like, Kenneth knows me outside of basketball and, what I like and what I don't like, and that I'm super duper goofy, but I'm not that person on the court, right? So on the court, I have this mean look about me and I'm super serious. And so I think that I don't know if I would have preferred the stardom, but I think that it would have been cool to be known like I was known in high school for my athletic ability. I think it would have been cool for that on a larger stage. People coming up to you like, oh my God. Like, I think that would have been cool.
So high school on the athletic level, then it was like high fives down the hallway, or what was it like transitioning from being more known in high school to less known in college?
That's exactly how it was. High fives down the hallway. Like, even when I go now, because my mom has me and my sister's pictures on her door. So even if I go now and visit her, and I graduated almost 9 years ago, they're all like, oh my God, you're the girl on the door, like you're Miss Wells's daughter kind of thing. So the transition where you go to a huge school with a large campus where no one knows you, right? It's kind of daunting a little bit. It's a little bit scary. Just because you don't know what to expect, and conditioning's on a completely different level, and preseason is hell, postseason is hell. You have no breaks. You go home. Maybe the longest break I had, I think, might have been for a week, because you're doing, preseason, postseason. You're always getting ready for the next season in some kind of way. So the transition was really, really, I don't know, it's kind of like a shock factor. I'm like, what in the world is going on, and how am I going to do it, and who's going to help me? And at the end of the day, it's kind of dog eat dog out there. And if you can't make the cut and if you can't do it, then that's fine. The next recruiting class is coming in next year, and I'll just get it from them. Like, I know in my class, there was only 2 of us who came in together, but we played the exact same position. And then there was already 1 or 2 girls who were playing that position that were there already. So it's always grooming for the next person and the next person. Because at the end of the day, it's a business, and that's their job. And that's how they make their money and feed their families. So whatever they have to do, they're going to do it in order to, get the wins and get to the next level and the bigger schools and stuff like that.
Now, certain industries will be a little more low key about having that conversation with their people. Did they get up in your face and say you're replaceable, or was it more subtle?
I would say it was more actions than words. Now I would say my sophomore year, there were some words. Like, I remember some days I would be told, have meetings and be told how I wasn't good enough or how I couldn't help the team win and stuff like that. But initially coming in, it's like the honeymoon stage, right? Like they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy to have you here," and that's before they know, like, can this girl really help me or not? I remember my coach at Florida State. She even came to Grovetown and was walking the halls and talking to people, and like just trying to get a better sense of who I was. But she didn't really believe that that was me. Like, she was like, "Oh my goodness, all these good things people are saying about you. Like, this can't be you 24/7. I kind of want to see, what that other side looks like, or how, how can you be like this all the time?" And then once I finally showed my other side, and hell, I didn't even know how to reel it in, much less she didn't know what to do with it. So, so it kind of, that was where everything kind of started to fall apart. But in the beginning, I would say it's a lot less subtle because they're recruiting and they want to get you and they're showing you the best of everything. But then once you get there, depending on the type of coach you have and the situation that you're in, because the Gino or Emmas probably get up in your face a little bit more than Joe Schmo at the smaller school. But they definitely, in the beginning, it's more honeymoon. But then once you get into it and y'all start to get to know each other and get comfortable, those words definitely can start to come and play a part in other things too.
So two things real quick. You talked about the seriousness on the court, and you can correct me if the numbers are wrong, but excuse me, I was at the game where you scored your 1,000th point in high school. They like stopped the game in the middle of the game, right, and like handed you a ball and stuff like that. You would have thought Ebony was receiving the most bogus award ever. Like, she was just so ready to go back and play the game. like it wasn't even to her. It was just like, all right, come on, let's get this back on. She was so serious on the court. So I will say that. But you had mentioned something else about the coach and telling you that you weren't good enough and stuff like that. How did you handle that? Like, what was your response? And also, me personally, like, I played better for coaches like that growing up because I wanted to prove them wrong. And then, like, some of the coaches I had, I didn't have a good relationship with, but they got a lot out of me because I just did it to spite them.
Okay.
And so I don't know if that was more your response or what was your response, and how do you handle that emotionally? Like, your whole life, you're like, I don't want to say you're put on a pedestal. You absolutely deserved all the accolades that you got. You worked hard for them and everything like that, but you were up here, and then for someone to tell you that, I'm sure that's a maybe a blow to your ego or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't handle it well at all, to be honest. Like, those couple of years that I was there, more so the last year than the first, I was really, really depressed, just like sad. I couldn't, it was hard for me to understand, like, well, how come, why am I not good enough, or am I not worth the time to try and make me better? Or like, how come I'm not getting the same amount of, development, or why aren't you as passionate about making me better than you are about this person to the left of me? Right. So it was really, really hard. And it was a big adjustment for me to make. And to be honest, when I was at Florida State, I don't think that I ever made it. So once I got, to my other schools, it was a little bit easier for me. But the difference was I had a really, really tough AAU coach. His name was Anthony Jackson. And he was a yeller, honey. I mean, like, in your face and yelling this and yelling that, like, do one more rep. Like, why are you missing? Take a lap kind of guy. Like, do push-ups. He was that kind of guy. But I knew that he cared about me. Like, outside of basketball, I knew that if I needed the shirt off his back, he would give it to me. If I didn't have a meal, he would feed me. You know what I'm saying? So I think the difference between him and when I was at Florida State, that as a person, I don't feel like they cared about me. Like, whether I had a good day or a bad day, or if something was going on with me, it didn't matter. It was all about basketball. What can you do for me inside of these 4 lines? And outside of that, yeah, we'll have you over to the house, but these are for, that's for publicity to me more than anything, right? When I was at my junior college, he was probably the most honest with me about how he was. He was crazy as hell. Coach G was crazy, okay?
Mm.
But he probably got the best out of me because one, he told me from jump he was crazy. So I knew what to do. And two, I know that he cared about us because, everything that he said that he would do in the beginning, as far as like, I'll have you guys over, I'll cook for you, I'll let you use my washing machine, I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure that you're good. I just expect 1,000% inside of those 4 lines, right? So there is where I feel like he got the best out of me, because even though he was hard and he was tough and cussed and practices were hard as hell, like we knew that he cared about us. And so we gave 110%. Plus, we knew he wouldn't tolerate anything else anyway. So that was the difference. So that's why it was so hard for me, because I came from a place where, you're right, I was on a pedestal and people, rooted me on and cared about me and made sure that, the best interest of me was at the forefront of their minds. And it was complete 180 when I went to school. So it was tough. I didn't handle it well. I was depressed. I showed my behind, and, that's why everything turned out the way that it did.
Yeah, I want to obviously move on to, because there's obviously a lot more we have to talk about that is probably a lot more positive. But before we leave here, I think the reason, at least in my opinion, that we were diving down this rabbit hole was, for our listeners out there who are looking to be collegiate athletes or who are going through something similar, even in a professional setting, can you offer up some advice to them?
Yeah. So I would say don't give up. Like at the end of the day, being in college, they what you get out of it is that they pay for your education and then you give them athletics. So they're going to get everything that they need to get out of you. So get everything that you can get, not like in a nasty way, but get everything you can out of the situation. Load up on those classes. The easy ones are in the beginning. Load up on those classes so that way you'll have, like I had a teammate who got her undergrad in 3 years and did her master's in the final 2. But I did a 1-year MBA. So you have options. So you can do, get all your undergrad out in a year and do a 1-year master's program like I did. Or you can, do, if you redshirt, you can do it in 3 and get your master's in 2. Or you can get 2 masters, do 2 1-year programs. You know what I'm saying? So I would say always know what your options are. Talk to people. Get the most out of the situation that you can, because they're going to get the most out of you that they can.
Yeah, absolutely. So you transitioned from there, went to JUCO, and then you went to LaSalle. Did you have – and LaSalle's no scrub basketball team by any means. Like did you – or how did that go? And was it better? Was it worse? Did you have a better attitude about it? Can kind of walk through that.
Yeah, it was a lot better, I think, just because I knew a little bit more about how things worked and what college athletics was all about. LaSalle's in the A10, so it's not as dominant as – it's kind of like mid-major probably, mid-deep. So even though, it's very competitive, it's not as intense. It's in a different area, Philly, City Life, like it was pretty dope. But I did have a better attitude. I had a better understanding of how things worked. And even if things weren't as favorable as I wanted them to be, I knew how to handle it better. Like at the end of the day, I'm here for this, they're here for this. So how can we make that work in the best way in order to move forward? So the ride was a lot more. I'm not going to say like coach-wise, I probably feel like he didn't really give a damn about us either. But it was a lot better simply because I knew, like, I was tunnel vision. Like, I knew what I was there for and what I wanted to get out of the situation. And so I just went for that rather than focusing on, I don't like the way he did this or I don't like the way he did that. Yeah, it still bothered me, but I wasn't so consumed with it like I was when I was at Florida State that I went into this dark place of, bad emotions and stuff. So it was a lot better.
That's good. That's good. Taylor, did you have anything? I know we walked through a lot of things there. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to ask.
No, I think we're good to transition to all of the international. What was it like going from the U.S., both on a social and personal level and on an athletic level? Did you find just kind of how was it going overseas?
I loved Ireland. Let's just start with that, right? So we'll start with personal first. So you go and everything's different. Like luckily, everyone pretty much spoke English. They have some heavy accents and sometimes you have to ask them to repeat a couple times, but everybody spoke English. There aren't that many Black people there, and the ones that are there, I think they're mostly like Africans kind of. So to go over there, I think as much for me and them, it was kind of a culture shock. They have a lot of questions. They want to know, you know how I used to wear my hair before I cut it off.
Yes.
Like they want to know, like, how'd you put that in there? What'd you do? Like they want to touch. They want to ask a lot of questions. It was really cool. When I went to certain places, they would ask to take pictures. And then, so like I said, the accents, some places were really, really heavy, but everybody spoke English. So that was helpful. As far as basketball, they're really into rugby and stuff like that. So basketball isn't as prominent over there. So the competition has some really good players, but it's just not as concentrated as in America. So the leagues they're competitive, but they're not as competitive. You probably have like 1 or 2 star players, but it's more of a team basketball because you don't have as many star players. They have different levels as well. So they have Super League, Local League, and I forgot the one that's in the middle. So that's the equivalent to like Division 1, 2, and 3. I played in the Super League. The school that I went to had a Super League. It's like semi-pro right next to it. So we only played once a week. It's usually on a Saturday. And we only practice maybe twice a week on like Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then you could go to weight training, but it wasn't really mandatory. So a lot of times, a lot of people didn't show up. It's a lot less intense. I will say that, a lot less intense. Each team probably had maybe 1 or 2 Americans, but you could only play 2 Americans at a time. So even if you had more than 2, you could only play 2 at one time and then have, the locals as your other 3 players. So complete 180 from America, not as intense, a lot more fun. A lot more relaxed. And I also played for the college team, and their schedule is there's a lot more games in the semi-pro than there was in college. So it was like a small section of games, and they weren't even every week. They were only, I say we played for the college maybe once every couple weeks. So the season was really short, and then you had like a tournament that you would go to. But completely different experience. It was a lot of fun. Very taxing on my body because I was like bigger than everyone, and the Americans usually played 40 minutes a game, so very taxing on my body, but so much fun.
That's where my follow-up question was going to go. Is sometimes in my life I found myself a big fish in a small pond, and taking that opportunity to just go 100 miles an hour and overperform to the point that it wrecks the curve. Did you find yourself able to enjoy the experience there? Or did you, as someone playing 40 minutes a game, just kind of destroy the competition, people around you, and start breaking records left and right?
No, definitely was not breaking any records. But I would say I did, like it was to the point where I averaged probably about 20 points a game. Playing 40 minutes, averaging 20, like being the go-to person on the team. But I did have some really good teammates. I had a point guard who's from Virginia. So she was a big help. I had some really good shooters around me and stuff. So even though I was kind of like the focal point, it wasn't to the point where I was just like crushing everything. And then other teams also had really good players too. So even though I was the focal point on my team, when I played other teams who were maybe a little bit more balanced or had multiple superstars on their team, it kind of ended up balancing out from team to team, even though it didn't really balance within my own team, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So with that being said, you had mentioned that there obviously aren't that many Black people over in Ireland, and you said that people would want to take pictures with you and ask you about your hair and things like that. Was it ever aggressive, or did you ever feel like I guess out of place or feel uncomfortable with that, or was it more like they're just curious people and they want to know? No,
I think this might have been because, the military life and thing, I'm used to like different types of people. I thought it was pretty cool. Some of my teammates or some of the people because it was a program. So some of the people who came along in the program with me were like, well, why you keep letting them touch your hair? Because you don't
Yeah.
touch black women's hair, right? Like, why are you letting them touch your hair? Like, why are you? And I'm like, they don't mean any harm. Like, yeah, it's kind of awkward if you really think about it.
Yeah.
But you know that they don't mean any harm, and it's something that they don't see every day, and they didn't say it in like a rude way or ask in a weird way. So I mean, I enjoyed it. You know, I like a little bit of attention, so I thought it was pretty dope.
Yeah, so that's I think there's two things we can gain out of that is obviously the way you reacted coming out of it, you know, positively and they weren't being negative about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, you know, people are oftentimes scared of what they don't know.
Right, yeah.
So having people gain awareness about any group of people, whether it's, you know, Black people, Hispanic people, whatever, gaining that awareness, in my opinion, breaks down those barriers.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can just open up to those people because you're like, at the end of the day, your hair might be different than mine, but outside of that, there's no difference, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's great. I wish more people took that approach on both sides, honestly. So I think that's really positive. Now, while you were over there, you said you obviously didn't have as rigorous a schedule,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how was it? Pretty much probably for the first time in years and years that you had free time. What did you do with that free time and how did you like the free time that you had?
I loved it. I went everywhere. We traveled and we also did coaching. Like coaching was a part of the program. But my what do they call them? Your host people. I don't know what the proper term for it is, but the person who was kind of hosting me and making sure that I was okay, he was really good about, like, if we had a free weekend from basketball, he was like, I'll cover your coaching, like, go and see Europe, like, go and do, you know, what you want to do. And, you know, because this stuff will be here when you get back. So shout out to Joe for that. Like, he made it possible for me to travel a lot more than I would have been. But honey, I went everywhere. Me and my roommate, me and the people in the program, like, I went to Amsterdam, I was in Rome, London, we went to Paris. I would have went to Greece, but my credit card got maxed out, so paying for that. But it was good. And then even within Ireland, going to different places like Dublin, some of my the people in the program, we were all spread out, so we went to see them in different places, Cork and all those other places, and it was just a really good time. Like, the food is amazing, the travel is cheap. I think I got a flight from, we also went to Spain. My sister came to visit me. I think the most expensive flight was to Spain, and that was $150. But my cheapest flight was like $30.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so it's really, really cheap to travel from place to place. And then you stay in, they have Airbnbs over there too. So you just stay in an Airbnb and save a bunch of money. And the food is cheap. It's just great.
That's great to hear. I want to go to Europe terribly bad. I think me and Tab are gonna take a trip, maybe if not next year, maybe the year after that, and try and spend a week over there. What was your favorite place to go to?
I say maybe Rome, because everywhere you walk, there's, like, you know, the ruins and the fountains and the statues, and it's like a really huge museum, basically. Then you can just go, and then the gelato is, oh my God, you have to try gelato, bro. It's so good. Like, everything was just really, really perfect over there. So I'd say Rome was probably my favorite, but really I loved everywhere. Each place had something pretty dope about it.
So were you taking like 1-day trips, 2-day trips type deal?
It was, depending on where we went, it was anywhere from 2 to 4 days.
Okay, that's really, really nice.
Yeah.
So when you were over there and you were coaching, how was that transition from being an athlete and used to being coached, and you know, having different varieties of coaches throughout your career? Like, how was that transition to coaching, and what level were you coaching at?
So there was a few different. So one of my services was to, I think it was like battered women, basically. So they stay in like this women's shelter. And for them, it's all about knowing what they need and what they want, really. So for them, they just wanted to learn the proper way to do things. They wanted to incorporate games with it. They wanted to just have fun, right? To get away from what they were going through outside of that. So that was kind of like their outlet. So for them, it's keeping it simple, making them laugh and doing it with them. They really loved when you get in the drills and do it with them. So that was with them. And then I went to a school. It was an all-girls school, and I think I had maybe it was like ninth to 12th grade. And so with them, they needed a little bit more discipline. Like, hey, y'all want to run some sprints or you want to learn this? But they also enjoyed games. Like they didn't want it to be so serious.
Right.
So that was kind of like a learning point for me because, yeah, sure, I want to have fun. But my definition of fun is like different levels of competitions and kind of like how my junior college coach did. Like we used to tear each other up, but we thought it was fun because it was in a competition kind of form. But
Right.
they wanted to learn while having fun. So that kind of helped me dial down my serious side a little bit because I figured out with them, you're not going to get the results that you want if they're not having a good time. So that was more so the focus. It was all about like drills and games and learning while having fun. And then I had a group of boys that I did every Saturday. And they were all different kind of age groups. And with them, you could be a little bit more like skill based and like go because that's what they wanted.
So you brought up some really good points. You're in management now in your professional career, and in my opinion, being in management, the most important thing for you to do is for you to figure out what motivates your employees and how you can cater your management style to get the most out of everybody. So It seems like, you said you had a lot of learning in that area when you were coaching. Do you see that transition into the workplace?
Oh, most definitely. Perfect example was yesterday. We had to go and pick up some cars from the airport. And so I was like, okay, I'll keep one person out here to wash cars, and then I'll keep one person in the office to write tickets, and I'll take the other people from inside. So I told one of the guys, I'm like, he was like, can I please just stay here? Like, I'll help write tickets. I don't mind washing cars, but driving makes him sleepy. So I was like, okay, well, he can wash cars and he can write tickets, so I don't mind taking. And at first I was like, you know what? No, I said what I said. But then I thought, I'm like, okay, if you don't mind washing the cars and the boys probably want a break anyways, then, that's no problem. I think a lot of times, sometimes in management, we get so caught up in like, I have in my mind how I want this plan to work. So can you please just do it how I want it to be done because I planned it out, right? But we don't know everything. And sometimes it could be the same thing, but it'll make your employees a little bit more happy and a little bit more willing to work. So you have to bend and just be like, you know what, even though that's not how I wanted it done, if that is going to make a little bit more sense and it's going to, make you want to work a little bit harder and do a little bit more, then sure, let's bend a little bit. And so it definitely has helped me to be more open to what people may want at the time. And kind of distinguish between when I need to put my foot down and when it really doesn't need to be put down. You can kind of bend a little bit.
Now, where is that hard line? Have you run into that either in the sports side or on the management side? How far is too accommodating? Do you have a particular metric for that?
Yeah, I'm still learning a little bit, but so far what I figured out is if it compromises what you're trying to do, you got to put your foot down. Like if I say I need you to go here, here, and here, and you're just trying to go here and here, well, what about the third spot? You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you see things from a different perspective when you're in management because you have to see a much larger picture. Whereas when you're like an entry-level employee or getting ready to get into management, you only know things from your point of view. So I think that when it comes to you trying to see the bigger picture, the key is kind of explaining to them if they need it, why you need it done this particular way, and then putting your foot down and be like, look, I understand what you're saying, but in terms of the bigger picture, I need you to do it this way because that's the way it's going to work, or that's the way it's going to make it easier for everyone else. So in those instances, like, yeah, you hear them out, and if it is a better plan, then you can go with it. But if they can't see the full scope of how things are supposed to go, then you got to put your foot down and be like, nah, we kind of got to do it this way.
So the key point there is making sure that they are heard and that they have a voice, and then you still run the play the way you want to run it.
Yeah. A lot of times it's just like in customer service, a lot of times people just want someone to listen to them. Like they might not even want any compensation. Like I remember a lady sending a customer complaint, and she was like, he didn't even apologize. And I'm like, well, that's a valid point. Like, she didn't ask for anything, didn't ask for any free days. She was like, I just want someone to acknowledge, like, this is what I went through, and I want someone to apologize to me. So I think a lot of times it's the same with your employees. They want you to listen to them and acknowledge that they have something to say.
And I think that even is at the management level, right? Like, we all have bosses, even though, we're in some level or shape form of management. You want them to listen to you as well, right? I think my company does a really good job of listening and being proactive. Like, they send out these surveys and they want everyone to participate, but everybody sends out surveys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they sit you down after they review the surveys and like go through how everyone is feeling and what their responses are and stuff like that. And they like try and proactively figure out ways to be innovative and change certain things to try and accommodate. And then also the things that they just can't do, they acknowledge that they heard it. So like, we have suggestion boxes and stuff. And a good example was in construction, a lot of engineering companies either work 4/10s and have off Friday, or they'll work 4/9s and only work until lunch on Friday. So somebody offered that in our suggestion box, and we're a little bit different. We're a design build firm, so we also handle the construction management aspect of things. So someone put that into our box, and our CEO was in town, and she's really, really nice. She's awesome. She listens. The first time I met her, she already knew my name, and I mean, yeah, as a CEO, I mean, that's impressive. So like, she sat down and she's like, hey, we've actually gotten 2 people who suggested this in a suggestion box. For us as a company, we try and be flexible, and they are very flexible, right? Where most of us are salaried employees. So if I need to leave at 4, I just leave at 4, right? As long as my team knows and as long as I get my work done, no big deal.
Yeah.
But they're like, we can't justifiably like shut down the office for half a day on Friday when we still have people in the field that we're managing who are working all day Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So like, they acknowledged that they heard us. And even though at the end of the day, I wasn't my suggestion, but the people who suggested it didn't get necessarily what they wanted, we got that feedback.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. So I think you're absolutely right. I think communication is key. Listening is key. And like, in my opinion, with management, sometimes having the people that you're working with buy into your plan, but like suggesting it in a way where they feel like it's their choice.
Mm-hmm.
You've now given them the power to almost make their own decision. And at the end of the day, they're doing the same thing that if you had walked over and just told them to do it, they would have to do. But now they're very positive about it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
now, Kenneth, the scope of that response that your CEO gave, because it may not be important to everybody, but to me on a personal level it is. Did she give that answer about you can't shut the office down and unfortunately you can't accommodate? Was that said in a boardroom? Was that said to the people that particularly put that on the survey, or was that sent in a company-wide memo?
No, she flew down to Columbia because she's based out of our Cincinnati and Dayton offices. So she's up in Ohio. So she flew down to Columbia. We got on a conference call with our Charleston office, and we're sitting in our boardroom, and pretty much everyone that's in the Southeast was in the meeting or called in. And she went through a lot of things in that meeting. A lot of it, obviously, I can't talk about because it's all, it stays in the room type deal. But with this particular item, it's not a big deal in my opinion. She like flew down. She made a point to walk through a lot of this stuff, and she made it a point that even the things that we weren't going to change, she wanted to make sure people felt like they were heard. And again, from a CEO perspective, I can't tell you. I'm sure there's not many companies out there where the CEO knows the names of all the employees, right? We sit in on Friday morning meetings as a whole company, and from upper level management, and we have like lower level management people that like filter through so that they can learn before they have to be in that position. And won't get into any logistics of it, but when those new people sit in, you know, my old boss up there sits next to her in person in the same room, but they're on the screen or whatever, on the video conference, and he'll say, "Who's that?" And she's like, "Oh, that's so and so." Or that's so-and-so. And like, she knows everybody's name. And I know that's not a big deal, but to me it is. Like, you could have so many employees, but the fact that like the person running the show knows who you are and makes an effort to know who you are, God, that speaks volumes in my opinion.
What is it? Have you had a boss that is kind of like the opposite of that? And what was the difference in between your work ethic and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, I won't name the company or anything like that, but I've had a boss before who in a very serious situation, like serious situations, actually multiple times, like he had my back 100% of the way, right? He backed me. He was in my corner, you know, 100% of the time, 100%, you know, in all of his mannerisms, his actions, and his words. But like, he did not know any of the people working underneath me. Like, he knew like the supervisors that were reporting directly to me, didn't know anybody else, right? And he was there just as much as I was, but he didn't make that effort, right? He would go out, find problems, and then either tell me to go fix it, or he would tell the supervisor, fix it. And like, I know a ton of people who worked there who couldn't stand working with him. Right. I would get it all the time. Like, you know, you jokingly sent me an email or a text message, Ebony, and you said, you know, for you, Kenneth, I'll be on at 8. Right. Which is really nice. And I love you to death for that. But like, I've gotten that in the workplace in a professional setting with people that I only work with. I don't know them on a personal level. I know their name. We talk, you know, and they're like, you know what, Kenneth, I'll do this for you. But like, I won't do it for him, you know, type deal. And that's the attitude you get. And you know, like when someone shows up late to work, you have to, you know, you have to hold fast and have rules and things like that. But if someone shows up 5 minutes late for work, you know, and my boss says, dock them 30 minutes. In my mind, I'm like, that might not be the best solution, because I guarantee you they're just going to go sit in their vehicle for the next 25 minutes. And now I've lost the full 30. I'm not paying for it, but I might pay for it in production. I might pay for it elsewhere.
Yeah.
So like, I go and talk to that person. I'm like, hey, this is the first time. Let's not make it a habit. You know, my boss wants me to dock you, but I'm not going to. And then, you know, the response I got in that situation was, I'll work through both my breaks today. I'm so sorry, Kenneth. It won't happen again. And then instead of losing that additional 25 minutes, we have 15-minute breaks throughout the day, 2 of them. So he actually worked 30 additional minutes for free. So now not only did I create a disgruntled employee and lose production, I've now gained production at no added cost, you know, because someone was 5 minutes late and I decided to have a conversation with them. So I think that you definitely have to be open to communication. And sometimes you have to blur the lines, which growing up, I thought everything was black and white. There's a clear divide, but realistically, that's just not how the world works. And you can be that way and you might be able to be successful, but the people around you will probably hate you.
Can we actually take that round table? So we've kind of established as a group that people want to be heard and people want to be known when you as a manager are trying to get your team to be as efficient as possible. What else kind of goes on that bulleted list? What have you guys learned through your professional experience that will really motivate your associates?
I would say one of the main things is playing to their strengths. So each person, you know, has something that they like, something that they're really good at. Perfect example, we were short-staffed this week and they sent the young lady over from another branch to help us out. She's really, really good at organizing. She's great at back-end stuff. She's really good on the phones and with customers and stuff like that. So she sat at the computer. I would write the tickets when the customers would come in between working on my back-end stuff. She called and confirmed all the reservations for the next couple of days. She touched on, you know, the new reservations that came in for insurance customers, call and set them up. Organizing our keys, things like writing the gas and mileage down on stickies on every key. So by the time she left, you kind of felt that impact. Now, if I would have said, you know what, no, I want you to write all the tickets and I'm going to handle this. Like we would have been putting each other in positions where we weren't best served. And she probably wouldn't have been as happy. You know what I'm saying? So even though she wasn't necessarily my employee, just from knowing her around the area, you know that those are her strengths, and you let her play to those strengths, even if she's only with you for a couple of days, and boom, she's happy.
And I would say, I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound really negative, and I don't mean it negative at all. Positionally, if you're up here and someone's down here, you really should close that gap, in my opinion. So if you ever have to tell somebody that you're their boss, you've already lost, right? Because you're at that point, you're not in a good situation. So in my opinion, taking yourself down a couple of pegs, right? When you're figuring out what roles people are best suited for, you also have to understand that, like, if you have a person on your team that's just really good at knocking out busy work, giving them busy work all the time is going to be probably miserable for them, because what you're best at and what you want to do are sometimes two different things. Mm-hmm. So you also have to understand that you have to make some sacrifices. There have to be some give and take. And I think that, like, creating a list of to-do items and then going to them and saying, hey, we might lose a little bit of production. Me as a manager, I might have to stay an hour late to make sure we finish everything. But, like, on this list of to-do items, what would you like to knock off? I'm still going to give you the same number of tasks that will encompass the same amount of time for you to do them. But if I'm doing something that you're best suited at and you're doing something that I'm best suited at, we probably won't have the same production. But doing that every once in a while, I feel like does wonders for your morale. And it really makes them feel like, hey, I will work for Kenneth or work with Kenneth because he doesn't think any of these tasks are beneath him. And he doesn't just shovel stuff down to me that he doesn't want to do. Because in my experience, I've been that guy who's had stuff shoveled down, and I've worked with people who have had stuff shoveled down to them. And when I propose that option, they're like, oh my God, like, absolutely. And then when you do shovel stuff down to them, they're like, yeah, I'll do this for you, Kenneth. Because they know at some point, they're going to be able to do something that they enjoy doing as well.
Now, follow up for both of you guys, same question, but increasing the scope. Both of the examples you guys gave were a single associate and you where it's a mainline person and it's a manager. What if it's you and like 3 or 4 associates? They're all equally skilled but have different skill sets. How do you prioritize? Do you have favorites from an interpersonal level? Do you know that one person produces more? How do you kind of, if you only have a couple of tasks to hand out, how do you give what to who?
I think that also plays on knowing your employees. So there's always something to be done, right? So for example, in enterprise, there's always cars that need to be washed. There's always tickets that need to be written, and there's always back end stuff that needs to be done. So I think knowing what they respond to the best, even if each person is not going to get a specific task this time around, right? You delegate it to the people, one, who I know don't mind doing it, and 2, maybe because like you said, there's a difference between if they like doing it and if they just don't mind doing it. So a lot of times, if I'll give it to the person who doesn't mind doing it, I know who won't give me a hard time about it, and then I'll leave the other stuff, like the guy who likes washing cars. So I'm like, okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to help them knock out a few cars. And then also leading by example, like I'm going to do all the stuff that I'm asking you to do, maybe on just a larger scale. So I think knowing them and knowing what they don't mind doing, in addition to also what they like doing, and delegating the task based on that, and then switch it up. Maybe the next day the same thing needs to be done, and you'll say, hey, I asked her to do this yesterday. Would you mind tackling this today? And just making sure it's all done, and then following up with it.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, like, when it comes to breaking those tasks up, I think a line of communication really helps. So sometimes lower level, I don't want to say lower level because it sounds really bad, but people who are not in your position, right, who are part of your team, whenever you ask them to do something, or whenever it's a task that they've been assigned ongoing or something like that, they don't ever know what you're doing, right? So they sit back and they're like, man, I'm doing all this work. Mm-hmm. What is Kenneth doing, right? So when I have a team that I'm actually working with, I literally start with myself. I'm like, hey guys, I'm gonna go ahead and tackle these 3 things. Do you mind tackling this? Do you mind tackling this? And by starting with that, I've already prefaced it in their mind. Hey, Kenneth's doing some work too. Like he's doing knock these things out. And then being flexible. So like I try to be objective when I'm working with a team, because you can't really play favorites. You can't be personal. I will tell you that I actually struggle more with least favorites, I guess. I try really hard not to have favorites, but if there's somebody on my team that I know is not a good employee, or is not driven, or is even not detailed, stuff like that, because in my job it's important to be detailed, I do tend to give them less. And I try to give them items where I can set aside time to teach them or walk through it with them. So in instances like that, I will, like, I might take 3 tasks. I might give 3 tasks to 2 or 3 people, and I might just give them the one and then set up a meeting with them for an hour so that I can walk through how it needs to be done, the steps, the process, make sure they take notes. And then I'll tell them, hey, for the next hour, work on this task. You can come interrupt what I'm doing at that point, and we'll go over it. And if something needs to be changed, I'll give you that feedback. And I think it definitely plays into knowing your employees, like Ebony said. But like I struggle when I have weak links on the team. That is an area where in my management skills I need to improve. But playing favorites, I try not to play personal favorites. I'm just like, I know you can get this done. I know you can get this done. I know you can get this done. It might be best suited for this person, so I'm gonna give it to them. So I don't play favorites with that regards, but I do have a struggle with weak links.
Yeah, I agree with Kenneth in terms of like weak links and people who probably aren't gonna get things done. I tend to put a lot on my plate and be like, it's just easier if I just do it myself. And I talked about that in one of the management meetings we had for work. It's just like, you have to delegate. Like, We're only one person, and if we want to be effective and if we don't want to be dog tired all the time, we have to learn to delegate, and we have to learn to kind of different tactics to get what you need out of each person. And sometimes it might be a little bit harder for certain people, but it's not impossible. It takes creativity. It takes persistence. I know one of the managers that I had, I simply did whatever she wanted because I didn't want to hear her mouth anymore. Like, so sometimes that's what it takes. It's just knowing what kind of triggers each individual person.
Yeah, and just one last thing on that, like those weak links, I brought that up in my performance review, because at my company we have several performance reviews throughout the year. And, it was explained very well to me, hey, if you take the time now, and this might not work in every situation, but for us it does. If you take the time now to help train this person, it might take you more time right now, but the hope is that they grasp it, and down the line, they will save you so much time, because then you can still, at that point, delegate them the full 3 tasks, right? And it takes 2 more off of your plate. So the hope is you spend that time up front, and you reap the benefits down the road.
Now, since we're coming up on about the hour mark, we have a couple of questions that we like to ask everybody that comes on the show. Since you've seen so much success, both personally, professionally, athletically, and academically, what does a 5 and 10 year plan look like for you? When the sky's the limit, what are you shooting for in the short and long term?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'd say in the short term, I would just, as far as my professional career, I'm an assistant manager now. I want to get up to being a branch manager. And that will open the door for me eventually in my, towards the end of the 5 years and going into the 10 years, I want to do HR. So my ultimate goal is to do people development. I love developing and teaching and trying to help people perfect their craft. And that's both professionally and basketball. So in a perfect world, in 10 years, I'm going to be doing people development, most likely with Enterprise. Once I get that branch manager spot, move into the corporate world and do people development there. And then also Me and my sister have been talking about a player development business where we have people have access to us no matter what the day is, what the time is. They can send videos. They can reach out to us and be like, "Hey, I'm really struggling with my jump shot. Like, can you watch this video and tell me what I need to do in order to fix it?" So in 10 years, I'm going to be developing people in their professional life, and then also helping develop student athletes and young people perfect their craft and things like that. So that's where I want to be.
That's really good. And in your in doing that and seeing where you're at today, if you could go back in time, what would you tell the middle school Ebony, and what would you tell the high school, senior year Ebony?
I tell middle school Ebony, take it seriously. Like, basketball can take you so many different places, and even though I didn't really love playing it as much as people think that I did, it took me so many places. So I tell middle school Ebony, you're good now, but honey girl, you won't be good 10 years from now. So take it seriously. And then I tell high school senior Ebony, grow up a little bit. Right. So like the real world, Kenneth, I'm very spoiled. My parents spoiled me so much. Like, I would tell her to grow up a little bit, enjoy this, but grow up and know that when you get past this point, everything's not like that, and everybody's not going to treat you in that way. So.
Oh, yeah. And one last, opportunity for you to provide advice. Shout out to Ruben, Uncle Rube. He wanted us to ask you this question. So, when you were going through that process from high school and into college, it's such a glamorized process on social media, in the movies, in Hollywood. What did you think it was going to be? And we've already heard what it was, right? What did you think it was going to be?
Oh, I thought it was just going to be an extension of what I was already doing, right? I thought I was going to go to college and I was still going to be that girl. And, I was going to get fed the ball in the post and do my moves and score points. And honey, it was not that. So I definitely thought it was just going to be a carryover,
Right. And I'm assuming in your thought process in high school, you don't think about emotions. You don't think about anything outside of that. You just focus straight on basketball. So for college or high school athletes who are transitioning to college from an emotional standpoint, what kind of level of advice can you offer them?
I would tell them and it all starts in the recruiting stage, right? So I would tell them, be mindful of what people are telling you. If they're promising you things without actually seeing how you perform on that level, that's a red flag. If they're, if everything is all peaches and roses and they only want you to talk to certain people on the team, that's a red flag. You want to talk to the people who are outliers and people who speak their mind. And for me, that was Chastity at Florida State. If I could talk to Chastity before I went there, I probably would have had a better idea, right? So you always want to look for things that aren't being showed to you, right? Because they're always going to show you the good things. But I say read between the lines and be like, okay, well, why ain't I been talking to that girl my whole visit? And go and talk to that girl, see what she has to say. But definitely don't get blinded by all the glamour and the glitz. Like, I know when I went on my visit, they took me around campus and everybody knew my name already, right? So they would stage people who work with the basketball team.
Oh, wow.
Out your name, like, hey, Ebony, hey. And it's just like this really big, really, really cool thing, right? So I would say, appreciate that, but take off the blinders and be like, okay, what does this really mean, kind of thing.
That's crazy. I've never heard that story. Like staging people on the campus. Wow. That is
awesome. Yeah.
That's interesting. If overall, whether it's professional basketball, whether it's emotional, whether it's mental, whether it's physical, I would say what I got out of this today is just never give up, right? Yeah. So walking away from here, I know, and I knew this before, but now I even know more of the story. Like, Ebony, if I had to sum Ebony up now and not necessarily put her in a box, it wouldn't be she's a very intelligent basketball player. It'd be that, she's determined, she's very driven, and she's going to get wherever she wants to go, right? Well, how would you sum yourself up in 3 words?
I'm being me. So I would say that through all of that, right? Even you look at me now, right? Like I cut all my hair off, and I try to go to different shows. Like when I went to see the Black Violinists, I went by myself. Like nobody wanted to go. Like that's fine. You invite people, but at the end of the day, it's okay to be you. And I'm really I can be a hard ass, but at the same time, I'm really emotional kind of thing, right? So it's okay for me to be who I am, both professionally, both outside of professionally, in a relationship, around my friends. Like, just be who you are, and you might lose some people along the way, and people who you thought were going to be there with you and for you forever. But then it'll give you space to for other people who appreciate that and can help you along the way. It gives room for them to come in and help build you right back up. So I would definitely say the one thing that I've learned out of all this is it's okay to be yourself.
That, oh my gosh, that gave me chills. I tell people that all the time. You know, there's, you know, a million different, you know, people who try to act like all these famous people and stuff like that, but there's one Ebony Wells, right? Yeah. That's great. Taylor, do you have anything else? Or Ebony, did you have anything you wanted to ask us?
No, I think this is awesome. I'm glad that you guys have started this. And like Taylor, I just met you, and you seem super cool. But Kenny, like I've known you since we were so I'm definitely proud of you guys, and just keep doing what you're doing. The topics are dope as hell. Like the vibe and the flow of the whole thing is dope. Like hour went by like that. So kudos to you guys. This is awesome.
I appreciate it. It's definitely been a cool opportunity. It's wonderful to meet you. I don't think we can really end on a higher point than that. So wish you the best in your future endeavors, and we will catch all of you guys on the next episode of No Universal Answers to the Universe.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Ebony.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.